Well, this has become a big political story as the Manhattan DA wants the suspect who's been accused of just bludgeoning a woman to death in a hotel here in New York to be extradited back to New York to face charges. Suspect's in custody in Arizona right now, where he's accused of stabbing a different woman. Now, the thing is, the prosecutor in Arizona is refusing the extradition request, saying the DA, Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, can't be trusted to keep this guy behind bars. So with that, let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. So we'll put up the headline on this case is a Republican prosecutor in Arizona takes swipe at New York District Attorney who's prosecuting Trump. That's why I say it's become a big political story. Should it be just a routine extradition if it, if there were no politics in it? How do these things normally work?
Well, normally you would never have a situation like this. I mean, look, what is happening here is extraordinary. It's not unusual that you may have suspects who commit multiple crimes in different states. But the way it works is that the two prosecutors in the different states would connect. They would work out who's going to prosecute first and who's going to prosecute second. It might depend on the severity of the crimes in the particular jurisdiction, which state has a greater interest in bringing the first prosecution, and that sort of thing. I can't think of another time when you have a situation here where one prosecutor refuses to extradite a suspect to another state out of the fear that that state would not keep the guy in check, imprisoned until his trial.
Let me put the two people up on the screen that we're talking about here, Alvin Bragg and Rachel Mitchell, just so I think a lot of people know, at least Alvin Bragg, you've been following things in New York, who he is. And let's talk about Rachel Mitchell and who she is as well. So Alvin Bragg, there you go. Manhattan DA, he's a Democrat. He's the guy prosecuting Trump in the hush money case. I would add to that the Republicans love to go after Bragg for, having, as they see it, too many dangerous people out of the streets. The bail rules, bail laws here in New York. That's been a big story. Rachel Mitchell's the county attorney in Maricopa. She's a Republican. I think when she came in, people might remember this, when the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were coming on, she questioned Christine Blasey Ford during those hearings. Republicans brought her in to do that. So that's when I think she rose sort of to national prominence. So that's who we're dealing with here. How does it play out, Tom? What's the next step for both of these very political prosecutors?
Yeah, and when you look at all that information, maybe it's not really a surprise that this dispute has all the ingredients for a political feud. I think the way it plays out is, my hope is that cooler heads will prevail and that there will be a communication. One side will pick up the phone, call the other, discuss the interest, discuss how they want to handle this. Again, consistent with the way that these sorts of disputes are handled in 99.9% of other criminal trials in the United States. Mm-hmm. The one thing to keep in mind is that it looks like, under the way this is currently shaping up, that there's not a lot of risk that this guy is going to be let out on bail. He is accused of extremely serious crimes, murder in New York, close to murder in Arizona. He's a dangerous guy who by no circumstance should be allowed out on the street. And so hopefully between the good efforts of Arizona and New York, they'll ensure that this guy stays locked up until his trial. Now,
Mitchell in Arizona was on with Dan Abrams on this network last night. She seems to be pushing back on this argument that she's, refusing to go along with the extradition, says it's something else. Let's listen.
It's not that we're refusing to extradite. It's simply that we're going to go first. I have him here without bond, meaning he cannot bond out. He cannot post any amount of money to get out of jail. And I believe that that is the best place for him right now.
So he does have a crime that is being accused of in Arizona, but is it the more serious one that usually goes first? I mean, she's just going first rather than extradition to New York.
Yeah, typically that's the way it would go. If you have one guy picked up on a murder warrant in one state and then he's arrested for jaywalking in another state, typically the jaywalking state would send the guy to be prosecuted in the murder state. Again, here he's accused of very serious crimes in both jurisdictions. And look, I don't think that the position that the Arizona county attorney is taking is crazy. This guy is credibly accused of committing extremely serious crimes, multiple crimes in the state of Arizona. And so for her to say that she wants to prioritize public safety, ensures this guy gets locked up, and when Arizona's done prosecuting him, at that point, she can extradite him to New York, it's not a crazy position.
It's an interesting case to talk about her situation because, like you said, we don't see things like this very often. But, there's a lot of politics and some legal arguments as well. Tom, as always, thank you. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.